The universe is not a chaotic sprawl, it is a web. Every galaxy, every star, and every atom is part of a grand, invisible architecture called the cosmic web. At the center of our local corner of existence, there is a point of infinite pull, the Great Attractor. It is the gravitational heart of the Laniakea Supercluster, a silent god that draws 100,000 galaxies toward itself in a slow, majestic dance across the eons. We always assumed this was a natural constant, a law of physics as set in stone as the speed of light. We never expected the aversion lords, the null architects, to try and cut the cord. They were a race of cosmic nihilists from the great void beyond Laniakea, and they viewed the structure of the universe as a cage. They arrived at the center of the Great Attractor not with an army, but with severance engines, massive anti-gravity pylons designed to neutralize the attractor's pull. Their plan was to decouple the Milky Way and its neighbors, letting us drift out into the Boötes void, where the lack of dark matter and cosmic gas would eventually starve our galaxy of the energy needed to form new stars. They weren't just killing us, they were drifting us into a permanent, frozen exile. They thought the scale of the Great Attractor made it untouchable. They assumed that because it was a gravitational anomaly involving the mass of millions of billions of suns, no biological species could ever hope to influence it. They believed that by attacking the very anchor of our supercluster, they had found a war we couldn't even comprehend, let alone fight. They were catastrophically wrong. They forgot that humanity doesn't just study the laws of physics, we enforce them. They assumed we were passengers on the galactic ship. They never expected us to take the wheel. We created the Laniakea Loom protocol. And we birthed the final guardians of the extremis, the gravity generators. We don't use ships to fight at the center of the Great Attractor. At the focal point of 100,000 galaxies, the tidal forces would turn a standard hull into a string of atoms in a microsecond. Instead, we built the anchor stations, planetary-scale graviton emitters forged from hard light, and stabilized by the very dark matter the enemy tried to avoid. We don't carry guns, we carry gravity wedges. These are massive high-frequency emitters that can hook onto the dark matter filaments of the cosmic web. We don't shoot the enemy, we anchor our reality to theirs and let the weight of the universe do the crushing. We are the gravity generators and we are about to lock the Milky Way in place. I am High Commander Silas Vortex Vane. My neural link is currently managing the stress of a billion-ton magnetic anchor, and my mind is stretched across the void, feeling the pull of every star in our galaxy. And I'm about to stop the drift. The insertion was a drop into the most violent light in the universe. The center of the Great Attractor is not a black hole. It's a region of space so dense with galaxies that the sky is a solid wall of white-blue fire. As we exited the warp fold, the tidal forces hit the Vanguard Prime with a roar that bypassed the air and vibrated through the very fabric of my soul. Stabilizers to maximum. Engage the dark matter sails. We need to catch the current before the null architects sever the node. I roared into the link. Generator 2, Sarah. The tidal shear is at 90%. My port side emitters are glowing white, Silas. The Great Attractor is pulling at my very marrow. Generator 3, Jax. Visual on the severance engine. It's an obsidian monolith 10,000 miles long, and it's already pushing back against the cosmic flow. The Milky Way is starting to drift. The null architects saw us. Their ships, non-Euclidean shards of void that seemed to delete the light they passed through, descended from the shadows of the galactic clusters. They didn't fire lasers. They fired repulsion waves, beams of negative mass that tried to push our ships out of the attractor's influence and into the empty dark. Ignore the ships. Target the monolith. We need the anchor. I leveled the Vanguard's primary gravity wedge toward the severance engine. It was a terrifying machine, vibrating with a frequency that was literally unmaking the gravitational bonds of the sector. I could see the cosmic filaments, the glowing blue lines of dark matter that connect galaxies, snapping like frayed wires around the alien machine. Sarah. Jax. Harmonic link. We need to weld the web. We stood in a triangle around the alien monolith. We engaged our gravity wedges. We weren't firing at the machine, we were firing behind it. We were grabbing the dark matter filaments that had already been severed and we were stitching them back together using our own ships as the needles. Stabilize the thread. Push the mass. The Vanguard Prime groaned, the structural supports of the hard-light hull screaming as we became the physical bridge for a galaxy's worth of momentum. It was the ultimate tug-of-war. On one side, the null architects were pushing us into the void. On the other, we were pulling the Milky Way back toward its heart. The aversion lords are launching void swarms. They're going for the emitters. Sarah yelled, her ship's hull flickering as the negative mass beams hit her shields. Engage the collapse fields. I didn't turn my ship. I simply increased the local gravity around the Vanguard to a level that simulated the surface of a neutron star. The alien void swarms, as they approached, weren't shot down. They were simply caught. As they entered my gravity well, the 50-ton alien ships were crushed into the size of marbles by the sheer weight of my defense field. They fell into my hull and were absorbed into the mass of my armor. The monolith is reaching full power. They're going to trigger the disconnect. The obsidian monolith began to glow with a sickly, gray light. The great attractor's pull was being neutralized. I looked at the long-range scanners. The Milky Way was moving. It was drifting away from the Laniakea flow, headed for the lightless Boötes void. Not on my watch. Jax, Sarah. Overload the cores. We're going to become the attractor. This was the singularity anchor maneuver. We didn't just pull on the filaments. We converted our own fusion cores into temporary attractor nodes. We were going to create a gravitational pull so intense that the Milky Way would have no choice but to follow us. Core limiters. Removed. The Vanguard Prime transformed. The golden geometric hull began to pulse with a blinding white light. We weren't just a ship anymore. We were a localized sun, a point of infinite weight in the middle of a war zone. I felt the G-force climb to levels that even the hard light couldn't dampen. My vision went red, then black, then white. I could feel the Milky Way, the 100 billion stars of our home, responding to our call. The cables of dark matter we had stitched began to glow with a fierce, blue kinetic energy. The thread was holding. Pull. We ignited our primary thrusters, pushing away from the Boötes void and back toward the heart of Laniakea. The obsidian monolith of the Null Architects was caught in the middle. It was designed to push a galaxy, but it wasn't designed to be squeezed between a galaxy and a supermassive attractor node. The alien machine began to buckle. The non-Euclidean angles of the monolith twisted and snapped. The gray light flickered and died as the severance engine was crushed by the very gravity it tried to deny. The disconnect failed. With a roar of gravitational waves that could be felt across the supercluster, the Milky Way snapped back into its original orbital path. The blue filaments of the cosmic web tightened, the Laniakea loom, having successfully rewoven our galaxy into the architecture of the universe. The Null Architect fleet, caught in the wake of the gravitational snapback, was obliterated. Their void ships were turned into jagged shards of scrap, swept away by the cosmic tides we had just restored. The great attractor was whole. The drift was over. I stood in the center of the command throne, my body feeling like it was made of lead, my suit hissing as the cooling systems fought to keep my heart beating. My HUD was a graveyard of system failure warnings, and my vision was filled with golden spots, but the sky was solid. The galaxies weren't drifting away. They were home. Sarah. Jax. Status. I rasped, the silence of the core feeling like the ultimate reward. I'm here, Silas. My emitters are melted and I think I'm permanently compressed, but the Milky Way is anchored. I can feel the stars, they're steady. Still standing. My ship is a write-off, but the web is holding. We anchored the universe vortex. We actually did it. I looked out at the swirling white fire of the supercluster's heart. It was a place of terrifying power, but it was no longer a place of fear. It was our anchor. We had stood at the center of the cosmic web and told the architects of nothing that our home wasn't going anywhere. We had looked at the infinite dark and we had tied ourselves to the light. Humanity has proven the ultimate truth of the cosmic extremis. You can try to cut the threads of reality. You can try to drift our world into the void. You can tell us that the universe is too big for a single species to hold. But we are the species that knows how to find the center. We are the gravity generators. And as long as we have a heart, we will have a home. The monolith is crushed. The web is rewoven. The Milky Way is anchored. The mission is over. The war is finished. The universe is solid, and its heart beats to the rhythm of the human race. The long drift is ended. We are exactly where we are meant to be.